Hey everybody. Sorry, I was actually looking to run my cool new intro music that I paid for and forgot to push the button. So if you watched the videos that were on last time, I had a sort of a video infographic that comes on, nice little bit of music, and I'm still getting used to the tech here. And unfortunately, it doesn't come on automatically because it should, but you actually have to watch the countdown till you go live, and then you've got to hit the music start, and then you're on. And I missed it. So if I looked a little befuddled when this got started, that's why. So here I am now, full green screen. Hopefully it doesn't look too annoying. If you've been watching this channel develop, and I've been sort of, just like going along from beginning to end with this channel. I started with new camera, which I'm really happy with. New computer, basically. I had to get a whole new computer because the video card just choked on trying to do this. I mean, it takes up a lot of processing power. New mic. And now, last but not least, is the green screen, which one of my videos had a green screen behind it, just no graphic. But so hopefully this green screen looks good. Comment, let me know how it sounds and how it looks. I can see a little bit of ghosting on the chair there, but I mean, it's not bothering me too much, but I'll work on the lighting. So if you find it, let me know how it looks to you visually, and hopefully it doesn't look too annoying. So obviously today's show is brought to you by Brinkzone and Alpha Joe, alphajoe.com, which is my latest creation, which, as I like to say, takes your coffee to an 11. It's a coffee booster I think that's the best term I've come up with as to what it does. And if you're not aware, check out alphajoe.com. So judging bodybuilding shows, I haven't seen a lot of people actually talk about judging bodybuilding shows. That is, people that have judged bodybuilding shows and really given an honest appraisal of their experiences. I mean, maybe they have. I just haven't seen it. But if anybody who was a judge, who has judged shows, really was sort of gave an honest discussion, let me know. But I haven't seen it. So for years, I've been thinking about sort of just having a whole discussion on judging bodybuilding shows, what it was like, what I saw. I will say up front early on, if you're looking for a whole talk on, what show was fixed because who slept with who and that kind of thing, you're not going to get it here. So if you're looking for like real juicy stuff, I'm not going to have it because honestly, I didn't see it, but I think I have some pretty interesting stuff to talk about, especially considering when I judged, which was the peak of bodybuilding. So let's give some background before I go into this. So I judged bodybuilding shows almost 20 years, starting basically in the mid-90s, which was the peak of bodybuilding. It was the peak of bodybuilding in the country, if not the world. And I did not judge national level shows to put that out there. I was Northeast regional judge, which was basically all of New England, more or less. Now, you have to understand also at that time that New England, especially Boston, was the hotbed of bodybuilding. At that time, you're talking about guys like Mike Matarazzo. You're talking about Paul DeMeo. Of course, Jay Cutler came out of that area. He came out a little later than that. He was a young guy, actually, at that time. And I used to see Jay along with other guys like Matt McLaughlin. And there was a whole crew that hung out, including Paul DeMeo. All those guys were all friends. They all trained at the same gym. And I would see Jay. He was one of the younger guys as a teenager, in the crowd and stuff. He was huge. You would see Jay Cutler at 16, 17. I mean, you knew this kid just had, genetics that were just not mere mortal genetics of normal people. It was really obvious. And he always was very covered up too. I mean, I saw Jay, I've known him, like I say, since he was 16 or 17. So bodybuilding at that time in the 90s, and I judged, up into the mid 2000s or whatever they're called. But it was the hotbed of bodybuilding. So, I mean, we had huge shows. We had more guys in one class than an entire show probably has today, or at least did when I quit, stopped, should I say. We would have to line them up in 3 and 4 rows. We might have 50, 60, 70 guys in a single class. And the quality of those classes was very, very high. Like I said, I just named a few guys that came out of that at the time. And there were a whole bunch of guys and girls too. But there were a bunch of guys that may not have had that level of recognition. Those are names you guys would know. But I mean, a bunch of guys came out that were national level guys, did get pro cards. A guy like Craig Licker, who was a friend of mine. I actually did work with him on his diet and his training at one time. Was a phenomenal bodybuilder. Craig, I think Craig could actually have gone really far in his bodybuilding. He had an amazing shape. He was sort of Lee Labrada with honestly more muscle and even better shape. But another day. Jose Ramon, another one. So there was a lot of really good bodybuilders. So just to give you background, I wasn't judging national level NPC shows, but the judging standards and the judging criteria and all that is the same. But to give you, like say, background, one of the shows that we had was called the Gold Classic, and that was at MIT. And MIT, actually, the University of MIT, where all the computer geniuses are, was a funny show because MIT, you had this bodybuilding show, and here's walking all the muscle heads and the bodybuilders are intertwined with all of the basically the highest IQ scientists, computer genius types, basically in the whole world. And it was a funny sight to see. Not to say that bodybuilders aren't smart, because there's plenty of smart ones. I'm just saying you are talking about MIT. So that was a really cool place. The place would be completely packed, and you would see, like I say, some of the best bodybuilders that would go on to be national level, pro level guys, on stage. And one of the fun things about that show also was that was an open show. And what that means is that anybody could compete in that show from anywhere in the country. You didn't have to be from the New England region. You didn't have to have won a prior show. And what happened with that show, because remember, this was pre-internet and stuff. You couldn't go look up like what was the quality of one show versus another. So what would happen with that show is you'd get somebody from Texas or Florida, or even a lot of times they would come right out of Santa Monica thinking that they would come win this easy show. And it was close to the Nationals too. It was either close to the USA or the Nationals, but it was a stepping stone show for a lot of people who would peak for that show or get close to peaking for the Gold Classic. And then whatever it was, a few weeks or something later, go do the USAs or the Nationals. So we would get guys and girls, but guys especially, that would come from, like I say, Santa Monica, thinking, okay, I'm going to go over to Boston where the boonies are, and I'm going to walk through the show and, get an easy trophy and head off to the Nationals. Well, that was not the case. And those guys were always in for quite a surprise when they showed up to see the quality. And occasionally a guy would come out of nowhere from one of those places and win that show. But for the most part, they would show up, and the look on their face, how good the show was and how good the quality was, and they weren't going to win the show, and they weren't going to, have an easy win and walk away. The Gold Classic became known as a really a top level show, and it was easily a show that was a precursor to the quality and what you were going to see at the Nationals in the USA. So that was the Gold Classic. Of course, there was the Mass States, and there was a couple of the New Englands. Those are still shows that go on. One of them is now, I think the New England is now actually called the Jay Cutler, which I did judge a few times because Jay, does come back. And Jay, back to Cutler a little bit. So yeah, that was a little early for Jay, but you'd see him around, and he did leave. He moved out of New England to Vegas and went on to win those Olympias. But that's just to give you, while I was not a national level judge, I will say that I think that the time that I was judging, the size of the shows that I judged and the quality of those shows, obviously what I'm saying is I was not judging and hanging out in like podunk shows where I judge a couple of, Mr. Middle of Nowhere, show with 3 guys and all that. So that's giving you some background to that. Like I said, but I haven't really seen anybody who's talked honestly, again, about what they saw and maybe what they experienced. So let's get down to the obvious question. Let's get down to the big one, right? I want to get it just out of the way. Fixing shows. Because of course there's always people that like to grumble or say or under their breath or yell it at you when they leave, about, the show is fixed and so on and so forth. And I will be the first to tell you that in my 20 years or almost 20 years of judging shows, not one of them was fixed. It is very difficult to fix a show. No one judge can fix a show. I don't care who you're sleeping with, whether it's the head judge or whatever. One judge cannot fix a show. So the high score and the low score is thrown out in case there's something going on or just someone isn't on their game or isn't paying attention. To fix a show, to truly fix a show, you would have to basically call in the entire judging panel, including the head judge, and say, this is who we want to win. And we expect you to go out there and make them win. And whether that was, well, whoever, a sponsor, the mob, whatever. But that would be the only real way you could fix a show. And like I say, in my 20 years, that never happened. I will say that not even in all those years even once did someone even come up to me and hint or say, hey, Will, nudge, nudge, so-and-so's looking good. And, if you could, kind of bump them up and keep a real sharp eye on them, we'd, appreciate. I mean, there was not even a subtle hint, talk, cash delivery, waiting on my seat, or anything else. All those years, the head judge that at that time, his name was Dave Berman, and he was a old school bodybuilder, and he was a president of a bank. He was also he was the state chair for a while, and Dave was a good guy. He was a real hard ass though. But I tell you what, not a chance in the world you would ever get Dave Berman to throw a show. Not a chance. Now, that's my region, my time, my place. I cannot speak for anywhere else or anybody else, but I can tell you certainly firsthand that to legit fix a show is really quite hard to do. And everybody, you're going to have at least 8 people, 10 people or so are all going to know. And you know how well people are about good about keeping secrets. I mean, so let me just get that out of the way. Fixing shows, like I say, and even if, and I will tell you that if you were to judge, you get your scorecard and the judges are all scoring separately, and you have your scorecard and you put them in. And let's say your score is that one judge is like way off. It's like you've got this guy in first and everybody else has him in, 7th or 8th. It's going to get thrown out immediately by the scorekeeper. And 2, I guarantee you the head judge is going to have words with you, or is going to look at you. And it's a pretty small community too. I mean, everybody more or less know who's friends with who. Everybody knew me. I mean, even people I knew from the gym. I was judging. I had to train with people in the same gym I was going to be judging, within a couple of weeks or whatever. And you know what? I never had a bad sport in my gym. I never had anybody who didn't think I wasn't being fair. Of course they would come talk to me, afterward or at, the gym, and what did I think? And, how did I place them? But, I have to say, all the years that I was in gyms and working with those people, guys and girls, I never had anybody be, like say, a bad sport about it and felt that they had been, quote unquote, robbed or whatever. Now, not everybody, but people's family in the audience and their friends, of course, always thought they were robbed. They were always thinking that they somehow got ripped off and robbed. And, somebody would yell, of course, fixed. Oh, the show is fixed. And I just want to say all those years of judging, all those panels, all those states, it wasn't even hinted at. You always had this like rumor of somebody sleeping with somebody. And in all those years, nobody, male or female, ever offered me sex to bump up their, not even that I could, as I explained, but let's say they didn't know any better. And they thought, well, nobody offered me anything. And, I'm a little disappointed by that, to be perfectly honest with you. I could have helped them anyway. And I would have said no, but I'm not going to lie. It would have been nice. Somebody had, said, Will, if you place me the highest you possibly can, me and Maria will be at this club later on, blah, blah, blah. No, never happened. Maybe it's the face. I don't know. But I'm just saying. Thanks, Robert. I saw your quote. Last time I did the show, quotes weren't showing up. But all right, I'm glad the green screen looks good. I do see a little ghosting, but as long as it's not annoying, great. All right, so that I wanted to get the big question I know people have had over the years about fixing shows and what would it take to fix a show and all that. And I will just tell you, it's I'm not going to say impossible. I mean, look, you can, it's easier, but honestly, I think in some respect, it's almost easier to fix a professional baseball game or football game, because a professional baseball game, I mean, you really only have to get, one umpire, on your side more or less to make a couple of bad calls. Or in football, I mean, honestly, I think by the numbers, it might be more difficult, frankly, to actually fix, like I say, a bodybuilding show than it would be to fix a professional baseball show, because you don't need 8 or 10 people in almost any sport that I'm aware of that to fix a show. So if you have any questions, comments, throw it out there. I think I can see them. I did see Robert. So no sex offers. Some fun stuff that we started. Now, remember around the 90s, this was when synthol, unfortunately, mid 90s, late 90s, again, was not very well known. Started to become, it's on my mouth here. What the hell is that? Yeah. So mid 90s, we started to see, you started to hear about synthol. It wasn't a thing. Nobody heard about it. And, we had one guy, in fact, unfortunately, just became known as Mr. Synthol. And it was kind of a shame. Think about most guys are using synthols that, usually that's all they have. Like the rest of their body is not very good. They look like shit, frankly, like they don't train. This guy actually had a really good physique. He ruined it, but he actually had a good physique, and he won, I believe, his class as a middleweight at one time. And then he came back later on as a light heavy, and his arms were like the size of his head, and it looked ridiculous. One time we were doing compulsory poses. For those who don't know, in bodybuilding, you have compulsory poses first that the head judge will call out compulsory poses. Everybody has to do the same poses. So they'll call out, side chest, rear lats, rear double bicep, so on and so forth. And the head judge, Dave Berman, yells out front double bicep. And this kid does front double bicep, and somebody yells out, "Nice double synthol," and the whole crowd just broke out laughing, and he stormed off stage. The thing about this kid, which is very common, has to be common, is there's a delusionment. He literally was offended. He denied up and down that he did synthol. He around, I don't know, whenever the internet started to sort of come online, and there was like websites and stuff, he would go online and say that basically the judges had it out for him, which was us, and it was fixed, and so on and so forth. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was so blatant. It wasn't even like maybe yeah, maybe no. I saw the guy compete for a few years, and then one day he walks out and he's 100 and whatever the lower end of a middleweight, light heavy is, and his arms are like I say the size of his head. It was just so silly. But there's a level of delusion that goes on there, that is hard to explain. So there was a couple of times, I'll give you a couple funny stories that was one of them. Another time, this was actually a really small show. This wasn't like a big show like the Gold Class. This was a little show up. I think it was like in Maine or New Hampshire or something. But this poor guy, he comes out and he's got his little suit on, and he's got an erection, a big erection. And I don't know if he was nervous. I don't know. I think he was just really nervous. I'm not sure. But the poor guy, he comes out and there's giggling in the crowd, and everybody's giggling. And Dave Berman, who was a real wise guy, again, old school wise guy, didn't have a political bone in his body, passed away, and I don't think he could survive in today's world anyway. He gets on the microphone and says, I believe there's a helmet law in this state, contestant number 8. I believe there is a helmet law. And everybody just broke out laughing. And it actually seemed to sort of break the tension for the poor guy. He looked embarrassed at first, but I got to give him credit. He stayed there and did his bit. And but I have to say, it broke the tension. There were other times where I will tell you, for example, there's always like smaller shows, usually not bigger shows, but there was always the one guy, man, always the one guy who would show up, who looked like he never lifted a weight in his life. Often was either like skinny fat or obese, no tan. It was just bizarre. Again, that is a mindset. There's something, these are people that have some sort of, psychological issues. I honestly, I felt bad for him. I couldn't even bring myself to make fun of them. You knew that something was wrong here. One guy asked for the mic and said that this was his before look, and that Jesus Christ had spoken to him, and that he was going to come back next year and win this show and go on to be a famous bodybuilder like Arnold, and and got off, and that was it. Of course, we never saw him again, so I don't know if Jeebus hooked him up or didn't, but so there was always one of those guys every time you see one of those shows, and I will say very interesting differences between men and women in that respect too. I never saw a woman do that. Not one time did I ever see a woman who showed up, in female bodybuilding. And at this time, remember, we're talking 90s. early 2000s stuff. Female bodybuilding was popular. There were a lot of female bodybuilders. Some of them were fantastic condition and ready to rock and roll, and went on to be pros. There was Donna Oliveira. She was early 90s, late 80s, great bodybuilder. But women again, very different mindset. So one thing that was interesting, I'd like to say again, that the good old ego, and this is getting back to men and women too. So the one thing that I noticed a lot was I and other people at the judges table, I would keep very copious notes on everybody up there, so that I had good feedback for them if and when they came to talk to me. And every show that I did, wouldn't you believe that sometimes nobody, maybe two people would come up to us and ask questions. I mean, if you didn't do well or you did well, wouldn't you want to know what you needed to do well next time to do better? Wouldn't you think? But I will tell you, most of the time they were women, because women would put their egos away and come up and ask good questions, smart questions. They would pay attention and almost invariably come back the next year and do better. One guy I did know, Lee, what was his last name? I'm blanking. Really good guy, but Lee. Now Lee didn't have great genetics for shape and stuff, but he was a big guy. And one thing about Lee Apperson, who's Lee Apperson, and I believe that was his name. But Lee, every show he would come up, and he was a real smart guy. He was worked in a lab. I think he was a chemist. But Lee would always come up after the show. He would ask questions. He would pay attention. And every time he came back, he looked better and clearly had paid attention to what we were talking about, at least what I was talking about. And he ended up winning that show. He won the overall as a heavyweight. His goal in life just was to win that show and go at least compete at the national level. He knew he wasn't going to win, but he was a big guy. I mean, Lee was, big, hard guy, 240, 250 pounds. I mean, he was no small guy, brutally strong too. But he knew he was a realistic guy. He just wanted to step on stage once in his life at a national level show and call it a day. And he ended up with a lot of injuries and stuff. But amazing to me, the egos that, like I say, these guys usually would just storm off, and their whole little group of family and friends and psycho fans that would tell them how great they looked and how they were robbed would all, go storm off in a group out of the thing and get patted on the back for how great they looked. Other observations. Let's see. I got a little notes here, so hope you don't mind, because I can't remember all this stuff. It's been a long time. There's a couple other. One chick who went on to be national level, Debbie Minsky. She was my girlfriend at the time. I trained her. She was a very strong girl at the time, very young, pretty young. Met her at the gym, and I saw potential in her underneath her. She was a little bit on the heavier side, but clearly very strong. A lot of really good genetics. I trained her up, and she won the Mass States and placed really well at the Golds Classic. So she went on to be national level person. Matt Dufresne's, and I'm jumping around a little bit, but Matt Dufresne was another one who came out of New England at that time. And in the crowd also, because that was such a good show, we would get people, national level pro bodybuilders coming just to, hang out and watch the show. Sometimes they would have a booth. I mean, we also had a pretty decent little expo. So sometimes, I saw Sean Ray there. I saw a number of, pretty well-known bodybuilders and coaches, and Chris Aceto would be there because, Chris was local. He was from Maine. He always had people that he trained in the show. In fact, he might have, for all I know, he might have been working with Mike Matarazzo. No, I'm not sure who he worked with, but he did work with, some pretty well-known local guys. I think he worked with Jay Cutler. I'm not, at least at one time. I don't know if that relationship continued or not. So any questions, anybody? Before I wander on here, I'll stay on for another 5 minutes and sort of wrap this up as to things that I saw and didn't see. I saw some bad behavior, not a lot. Honestly, the worst behavior I ever saw was at the national level. I was there at the USA when Craig Titus smashed his trophy on the floor. I guess that was behavior of things to come. I got a whole other story someday of Craig Titus, so I will. I have to make sure that the statute of limitations is up on everything I saw. So, but I will have a tell-all story, an insider bodybuilding story about my weekend I stayed at Craig Titus's house. So why did I stop? So basically the reason I stopped judging shows was the popularity of bodybuilding really started to die around, I don't know, 2005, something in that ballpark, maybe a little later. But steroids became a household name. The laws changed, being really big and super big, just culturally, just wasn't that popular anymore. So the shows really started to get really small, and that was also about when things like bikini started. So, when I judge shows, remember there was male bodybuilding, female bodybuilding, there was fitness. When fitness was a lot of fun. I liked fitness. I had the most respect for those female fitness athletes because they had to do an entire routine, and those routines were killer hard. On top of looking good and being in shape and doing the bikini round, or the physique round, and all that. The of all the athletes that were up there, the ones that I had the most respect for as athletes who had to put the most time and effort were those fitness athletes. Which is why you never had a lot of them, because it was probably the hardest thing of all to do. So that was all we had. Now bikini came in, and obviously bikini was designed to open up the competition to more people, get more people in seats, and all that. Well, I'm getting to it, Kevin, actually. So Kevin, I just mentioned that bikini came in. Kevin just asked, what do you think of all these new divisions? So yeah, I'm getting to it, and let me continue on. So I just started, as I said, my judging was starting to wane. That was when bikini came in, and at that point, it was like all we had to do was like 3 or 4 divisions to deal with, and these were late nights. I mean, we would be, it'd be 11, 12 o'clock before these shows would end. Now, once bikini came in, female bodybuilding just disappeared. I mean, we'd have like either nobody, it'd be like 3 girls in the whole show, in one class. And, and that bummed me out. I like female bodybuilding, bikini. Then you would have, you might have 20, 30, 50 bikini girls coming out. And at that time, the judging standards, was all over the place. It was a new division. Nobody was totally sure as to how to judge it. Honestly, if you looked at judging scorecards, of the judges for male bodybuilding, different divisions, they would all be pretty close. I might have a guy in 4th and the judge next to me had him in 5th or something like that. Bikini was like all over the place because nobody really knew what we were supposed to be looking for. I mean, and that obviously that's changed. I mean, now there is that over time bikini has gotten a much more structured and understandable judging criteria. But look, I like to see pretty girls in bikinis as much as the next guy, but 20 and 30 and 40 of them. And it was just like, it's 2 a.m. and it was just too long a day. So after that, to answer Kevin's questions, I was pretty much when I was like, had enough. I just couldn't sit there all night, and bodybuilding was dying off. And then out came, men's physique, right? Men's physique, classic. So to answer your question, Kevin, I actually like them. I didn't think I would, but actually I think the classic physique, I really like it. I think it's good. Women's classic physique, I think it's great. I really enjoy it. It's the look. I think that it's been smart because it brings back the look that a lot of people felt is missing, which was the focus on conditioning. I mean, conditioning is more or less first. And obviously everything else, balance, symmetry, proportion, all has to be there. But I really did. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I didn't see a bodybuilding show. I mean, I have to say, once I stopped judging, I didn't go to shows. I had no reason to go to shows other than an occasional pro show where I had a press. So I wasn't sure how I would like it. And I went to a pro show in Orlando, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, which was the first show I'd been to in a decade. And I really liked some of the new, some of the new divisions. I actually think it's going in the right direction. I did write a not terribly complimentary article about wellness, which was in Testosterone magazine. To be honest with you, I think wellness is maybe again, you can only put so many divisions in there. And I kind of feel like wellness sort of has jumped the shark. Now, let me be perfectly honest here, or clear, that I think that the women who compete in wellness are some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life. I mean, just mind-boggling. But remember, what I see as a judge, what I think should be there as a judge, and who I think is beautiful or whatever. These are 2 separate things. And this is also another issue in judging. I will say that while there hasn't been a lot of shows, I haven't seen any shows that were fixed. There were definitely times in female bodybuilding and stuff where I felt that some of the judges were leaning towards who they were attracted to versus who was the better bodybuilding. Now that's a different matter, but it was never, conscious. And I did say to somebody once, he was kind of like edging, well, don't you think, we were talking about somebody, and he said, well, I said, look, I'm leaning toward this person and that other person. He said, well, the other person, she's more attractive and something. And I said, look, you got to separate. Okay, I'm going to pardon my friendship, people. I said, but look, you got to separate who you want to fuck from who is the best bodybuilder up there. And I said, you got to separate your guy brain from bodybuilding. And yeah, it's nice if the whole package is there, for sure. But I felt like he was a new judge too. He was a newer judge. And I just wanted to make it very clear to him where that line needed to where that line needed to be. So I hope that answered your question, Kevin, as to that. So I actually like the new division. I think it's worked out pretty well. I do think I think that the wellness division may be pushing it a little far as to what makes a physique round. A lot of times, that the wellness division is sort of geared towards women that have more musculature and are thicker on the bottom. And obviously, for example, the wellness division, or the sort of the wellness look, started, as you'd expect, in like Brazil and in South America, I've judged shows in Panama, and the wellness division is popular, and it's obvious. But I think at the end of the day, you have to look. You're always looking for proportion and balance and all that. And I well, as beautiful as I find the wellness division women, I think that they should be, they should really be able to compete in the other divisions. And if they just don't have the proportion for it, I'm not sure shoehorning in a division for them to fit in, which I feel kind of gets away from the very premise of all physique judging, which, like I say, balance, proportion, and so forth. I'm all on the line about that one. But beyond that, I think that the physique stuff, the women's physique and men's classic, I think are really great. And I think it's actually bringing back some interest. So, all right. So that's 32 minutes. My sort of goal with these live shows is to do about 30 minutes and not bore people. And as the man said, you always want to leave people leave them wanting more. Right. Sorry. All right. So if there's any questions, comments, feedback, drop something, and I'm just going to jump off. As you know, check out alphajoe.com. That's going to take your coffee to an 11. It feels good. It's good for you. And it gives you energy without any jitters and that kind of thing. So kind of win-win as far as I'm concerned. And I guess I don't see anybody speaking, so I'll see you all on the Brink Zone.